Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. You are now live in the meeting.
Good morning. I am Chair Brian Moffitt, and I would like to welcome everyone to the June 11th, 2021 meeting of the Downtown Commission. We thank you for coming this morning. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently. We are live streaming on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website, and also linked on the Downtown Commission's committee page. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone, and so for everyone attending today, thank you and welcome. At this time, I will go through and introduce all the committee members who are participating virtually. Everyone, you've done this before, please make sure to mute your microphone if you're not speaking. When you have a question or would like to speak, please unmute your microphone. And committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Commissioner Dane Berger.
Hello.
Commissioner Franzi Charon.
Morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Andrew Fletcher.
Good morning.
Commissioner Hunter is unable to attend. Commissioner Stephen Lee Johnson.
Good morning.
Commissioner Robin Rains is unable to attend. Commissioner Guillo Rodriguez.
You got it right, Brian. Good morning, everyone.
I'm going to practice every day now. Commissioner Megan Rogers is unable to attend. Vice Chair Ruth Summers.
Present.
And our City Council Representative Liaison, Sage Turner.
Good morning, everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you. And to help our audience follow along, I'll go through the agenda. I'll state each section of the agenda item aloud, and we'll do a vocal roll call for each vote. Our agenda is linked on the Downtown Commission page, if you'd like to follow along there. Committee members, commission members, please raise your hand to speak, and I'll try to call upon you. So at this time, we will go through and review and approve the minutes from our May 14th, 2021 meeting. Are there any comments or a motion to approve?
I move to approve. I second.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. So at this time, I'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Dane?
Yes.
Franzi?
Approve. Yes.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yes.
Stephen Lee?
Yes.
I am a yes as well. Gio?
Aye.
Ruth?
Yes.
And Miss Sage?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Our agenda today, we will look at our public comment, which we did receive some public comment. I don't think we've gotten any voicemails. It was all received by email, best of my knowledge. We will be looking at the noise ordinance. We'll have a presentation from Ben Woody, the Development Services Director. We will discuss briefly the development impact of the 4 Points project, and then we will go through our updates and reports of our working groups and committees. So at this time, we can review and discuss the public comment that we have received. The commission members should have had a chance to look at that. Hopefully everyone has read the public comment that we received last night. I've got 9 pages of comments. I think every single one of them is in regards to the sound ordinance. Correct? So I believe, Dana, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is also linked on the webpage as well, correct?
Is everyone else getting an echo, or is that just me? Okay.
Okay. I'm not echoing, I'm sorry. Maybe it's me. I need Andrew's microphone probably. We are not required to, and I think it would be detrimental to read through these, but we will discuss some of the key points as we go through the noise ordinance presentation, if that's agreeable to the commission members, or you think that we should address any specific issues before we jump into the agenda items.
Chair Moffat, this is Sage. I just want to be sure that after we hear a presentation on the noise ordinance that I can read a comment that was sent last time that was unable to be read.
Yeah, we have that at the bottom of the agenda, but I think we will move that up, and since it pertains specifically to the noise ordinance, we'll have you do that as we discuss that ordinance. And commissioners, please feel free to pull from and read specific pieces of any comments as you see fit as we move through the agenda. And so with that, I think Ben Woody is going to walk us through the current status of the noise ordinance.
Good morning, everybody. Ben Woody, Development Services Director. Thanks for having me back to talk about the noise ordinance. We've done this a few times already, 2 or 3. I don't remember. We've been at this for a while, but and I think Dana is going to share a presentation in a minute, and and if that doesn't work, Dana, I can do it as well. But what I'd like to do today is take a few minutes. I have an abbreviated presentation. You have had the long version before, so I'm not going to do that to you again. But I'd like to give an update on kind of where we're at in this process, and then I'd like to focus really on the downtown area and what this ordinance looks like in that particular geography of the city. So I'm going to have kind of a downtown focus today. I think in the past I've been a little broader, but as Dana cues up the presentation, if you can go to the next slide, please. And this first slide is really going to start with a timeline. And, we had a 10-month halt in the work because of the COVID pandemic. This was not something we were actively working on. So we've really been at this for 2 years almost, and it seems like a long time, but again, there was a break, and I've learned after doing this for 2 years that it seems to take most cities actually 2 or 3 years to do this. So I would tell you that our timeline's actually not that unusual, but we are at the point where we have a draft ordinance. We have a recommendation from the Public Safety Council Committee that I will discuss, and we are on a path to a June 22nd consideration by the full council. Next slide, and that's tentative. Next slide, yeah. The top noise concerns are nothing that you don't know already. This is one thing I think everybody agrees on. These are the areas that we are trying to address in this ordinance rewrite. Next slide, please. And so where that kind of lands us is here. The bullets on the left, I'm not going to read these to you, but the bullets on the left are a really high level summary of what I think the community probably agrees with. We want Asheville to be vibrant. We want a high quality of life. We want an enforceable noise ordinance. I think Asheville is a place where we can actually explore community-based solutions first. We can do things like education, and I think we can do this differently in Asheville. And I think everybody probably agrees with that at a high level. But when you get into the details of the ordinance, and that's the 4 bullet points on the right, it becomes increasingly difficult to get community-wide agreement, as one would expect. And these are areas that ultimately probably will require some sort of city council decision. And that's decibel levels that I'll discuss in a minute. This concept of sound exceedance that I'll discuss, which is a big issue in downtown right now. Public oversight. We are recommending the establishment of a noise advisory board, which is different than the current noise appeals board. So we do recognize that there is probably a need for continuing public engagement and oversight in this. And then finally, there's always concern about how the city kind of enforces things in general. So next slide, please. And I'll work through those, and we can kind of, if you want to stop, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to do that at any point. So, and I think what we've done as DSD staff, and again, we kind of came into this not knowing a whole lot about noise, to be honest, but we've learned a lot. We're not viewing this as an ordinance update. We're viewing this as a program, as we're actually trying to prop up and establish a city program area. That became particularly true after June of last year when the city started the Reimagining Public Safety Initiative. So at this point, noise administration is moving out of APD. They're still our partner, but eventually the goal is that it's fully out of APD. So we look at this as a non-APD department is more of a program that we're trying to build. And we think that that looks like, just to give the commission an example, that's, how do we educate people? How do we create a good neighbor policy? How do we create fair and consistent enforcement procedures and systems? And that means things like a commitment to whatever that may be, 18 months, 2 years, to reevaluating this ordinance to make sure it's working like the community wants it to. So again, we're not looking at this as just adopt an ordinance and be done. We're looking at this as building a program area and kind of reimagining noise enforcement. Next slide, please. And equity has been a key piece for us in this, and actually equity has really informed some of the decisions we've made with the ordinance, particularly where we've decided to use the noise disturbance standard versus where we've decided to use objective decibel standards, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But, you know, equity, what it really looks like is, you know, not leading with a punitive approach, trying to lead with a community-based, trying to help people be successful, whether you're the noise receiver or producer, looking for ways to work together to build partnerships to address systemic noise issues, using data to determine that. We won't open this today, but if you go back to the presentation, the PDF that you have, you should be able to click on that use data link, and you'll kind of see the way we're able to pull data out and identify, you know, where we need to proactively address our attention in terms of, again, not being punitive, but solving noise issues. So there is a way to do this better. Next slide, please. So now we'll kind of get into what I think all the public comments are really about, and that is, you know, what the standards end up being in this. Two distinctions that I think are really important to make. What matters in this ordinance is where the sound starts. So what matters is where it's produced. If the sound originates in public space, so think buskers, think about downtown, the space that we all use, or the sound originates in residential districts, it is subject to the noise disturbance standard. I'm going to talk about that in a second. If the sound originates in a commercial district from a private property, so businesses, it is subject to an objective decibel standard. So just want to make sure we all are on the same page with that. Lots of cities do it lots of different ways. Next slide, please. So the noise disturbance standard is one that has a bad reputation in the city. A lot of people don't like it. As we've learned more about how to enforce noise and how to do that, we actually have grown to like this standard. I think what needs to happen is it needs to be enforced more consistently. I think that's where some of the challenges have been with this standard. Again, this is what would apply to sound so this is apartment sound. Could be a kid roller skating in the hallway, somebody jumping up and down on the second floor apartment. This, in the downtown context, could be buskers, the drum circle, things like that. So this is sound that happens in public space. And what's interesting about this particular approach is it's not, decibel levels aren't the sole determinant of whether or not a noise violation exists. So if you have an objective decibel standard, that is the sole determinant of whether or not there's a violation. What the noise disturbance standard does, it allows you to use context. So, for example, there may be a sound created in public space that is fine in terms of a decibel perspective, but it may go on for 8 hours straight. Well, if you look at, you know, the criteria number 5, you know, this allows you to factor in just the duration of that sound. Are they drumming the same drum song for 8 straight hours in the same location? May not be a decibel issue, but maybe a duration issue. So again, when you apply the noise disturbance standard, it doesn't have to be all 5 of these. It can just be one of these. You can use a decibel reading. You can take a decibel reading to determine the volume. But again, this allows you to look at the context of the noise. And I'll take a second to explain this. So take the drum circle, for example, on the Friday night drum circle. I think everybody agrees that's kind of a Asheville cultural institution. I doubt the drum circle could ever comply with the decibel standard. If we created a decibel standard, we'd have to probably think about just exempting the drum circle or making it high enough that it could exist. So again, the noise disturbance standard is a way to understand the context of that drum circle, that it is just a Friday, it's organized, it's permitted, etc. To talk about busking for a second, just to give the commission some context. When we're downtown taking busker sound measurements, this is just decibel based, and we're doing that within about 10 or 15 feet of the busker. And I'm not going to name names because I don't want to do that here publicly, but the buskers that people like, whether they're amplified or not, it doesn't matter if they're amplified, they are about 75 decibels when you measure it 10 or 15 feet. So when I have conversations, the buskers that are pointed to as good examples, they're still about, if they have music, about 70 or 75 decibels at 10 feet. Doesn't matter if they're amplified. the complaints that we get when we go take measurements at 10 or 15 feet, they are always amplified, and they were always over 80 decibels, probably closer to 85. So again, it doesn't, that's just an example of it's pretty easy to go determine where there's an issue in public space. But I would say sometimes the things that we like about the use of public space don't always fit neatly inside a decibel standard. So if we can go to the next slide, please. And then I just wanted to spend some time on that to give some context to the commission. So these are the objective decibel standards. So these are the standards that would apply to a business on private property. These are measured where the sound is received. And so what that means in plain language is we're going to go where the complaint comes in. That could be really far away. More likely, the complaint's probably going to come in across the street or in somewhere in close proximity. So that's where we're going to go, and that's where we're going to measure these decibel levels. One thing I want to make a note of is when you measure decibel levels, that's done as an average. So I could have music in I could be Jack of the Wood. I'll use them for example. I could have a bluegrass band, and when the door swings open because somebody walks in or out, the noise is going to peak. It's going to hit 80 decibels, maybe. But when the door closes, it's going to drop back down to 60 or 65. That's why you measure these as an average. So you measure it for a duration of a minute, and it averages out. It averages out the lows and the highs and gives you what's called a LAEQ. So I think one misunderstanding, just because you hit 100 decibels for 1 second doesn't mean you're violating the standard. It's the average. So it's like the average sound you're putting on somebody else's property. You can be as loud as you want on your own property. There's no standard for that. This is a matter of how loud can you be on somebody else's property. Are you creating a nuisance at that level? Because remember, the noise ordinance is a nuisance standard, and it's basically that's what it is. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, Ben. Are you going to speak to the subtract 5 decibels for pure tone, continuous, cyclically varying, repetitive, impulsive? Could you explain what that means?
Yeah, I will do that. And I wasn't going to, so I'm glad you asked that question. And so what that means is, and this is more common in cities out west and other places. There's not a lot of this in North Carolina. So a pure tone or a continuous sound could be something like an HVAC system, like a signal of some sort. It doesn't fluctuate, it's consistent. Those are generally considered to be more of a disturbance to a person. So, and those are a disturbance at generally a lower decibel level. So best practice or recommendations in other cities says that take your base decibel, lower it by 5 to 10, and then use that as a reading for like an HVAC system or something like that. So it basically lets you better capture not what I would say is loud sound, but I would capture as very disturbing sound, because again, it doesn't change and it's constant. So again, that's trying to lower the decibel so you can deal with those type of situations when you need to, the city. The last thing I'll say on this slide is these are the decibel recommendations that were put forth by the Public Safety Council Committee. So these are not what you saw the last time I was here. So these are the recommendations that we've added subsequent to that council committee meeting we had. I think it was earlier this week. Maybe it was actually last week, I believe. So just want to make sure that the downtown commission understands where these decibel levels came from. Next, and the curfews too. Another key thing that changed, I need to point this out, is in addition to the decibel levels that you can see, the nighttime curfew is 11 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and then it is 12 a.m. Friday and Saturday. And what you see here, these are times in decibels that match Wilmington, North Carolina, actually.
So they increased the allowable decibel levels of the objective standard, but they left the noise the noise standard alone. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
And they also moved the curfew times later, if I see correctly.
That is correct.
And that's the public safety, not development services.
Correct.
Okay.
Next slide, please. And just because everybody likes to see this, here's just some comparisons from other cities that are in close proximity to Asheville. We have like 12 more of these, but they wouldn't all fit on the slide. But just to give some context, you can see that some jurisdictions measure where the sound's produced. Some jurisdictions measure where it's received. I think that depends on what you're trying to accomplish in your city. Decibel levels are different everywhere. Again, that depends on what works for for an individual city. You see what we've done in this revised ordinance is try to match Wilmington. You will notice, and I've made those blue, that I think I think when the public safety made the motion, they intended the nighttime decibel level to be 70 in the CBD. So I think that the last two numbers were transposed. So I don't want to get into too much detail on that, but I think we've captured public safety's recommendation in the previous slide. But again, you can see just what this looks like in other cities. Next slide, please. So another big issue, I got to spend a second on this, is sound exceedance. So we have base decibel levels. There are events, there are things that exist that are going to exceed those. And that is not uncommon. Almost every city that we've looked at has some sort of exception clause or process to allow exceedance. That could be a variance, that could be a special permit. There's lots of ways to do it, but it's very, very consistently allowed in other cities. So we have tried to build that. The one thing I want to say about this in particular, and we'll talk about performance centers. We have outdoor performance centers, places like Rabbit and Salvage Station. They're permitted, they're allowed to have outdoor shows. The fact that they exist has nothing to do with the noise ordinance. They exist because zoning allows them to exist. So I do want to make sure we understand that the noise ordinance is not a tool to regulate the existence of outdoor performance centers. It is a tool to ensure they're not creating an unreasonable nuisance on other properties. So that's just some context for what this is. And so what we've proposed in this is to allow everybody to exceed the noise ordinance at least 2 times a year. All you got to do is submit a permit application to DSD. I assure you, Mr. Chairman, that that's going to be really easy. I promise. Super simple. And I think that's a recognition that Asheville's a place where there's nonprofit fundraisers and people have annual celebrations, and we want to embrace that. And what the permit requires essentially is a registration with the city, and you provide notice to neighbors within 500 feet. So everybody's going to know you're going to have a big nonprofit blowout on Saturday coming up. The second tier is places that do that more regularly, that actually have occasional concerts. That's up to 8 events. We're asking for the permit, and then we're asking for what's called a sound impact plan. Don't need to hire an engineer, but you need to show where's your stage, where's your people, where you're pointing your speakers. Are you pointing your speakers at the neighbor's house, or are you pointing the speakers back at your own property? So it's just, letting people have more events, but a little more due diligence by the person or the property asking for the permit. The last tier is up to 30 events. I know that's a lot, but then what we're proposing is to require a sound impact plan done by an acoustical engineer. So this is you're gonna have to spend money to do this, is invest in a professional sound plan, and also limit this tier to places that are already approved as performance centers. So you have to be built and permitted as a performance center. We are also going to recommend that council consider changing the criteria in the UDO to make sure that from a land use perspective, we are being more careful where we allow these to be permitted and built in the future. Next slide, please. And I'm almost done. I always get asked about enforcement. Right now, APD does all the enforcement for noise. Not right now, but previously they did. As part of reimagining public safety, that is moving out of APD. You can see kind of where we're at currently trying to work through this. DSD's office hours are 8:30 to 5. Only 10% of the noise complaints come in during our business hours. So 90% of the issues we're having to try to deal with outside of our business hours, we are doing that with existing staff right now. We have 2 new positions funded in the budget. And so as we bring people on, we will bring them on at different hours, and we'll get better at after hours complaints. APD is still our partner in this. They're helping us with after hours complaints when they're able to. But eventually, as we get this program put in place, you'll see more and more of that after hours response shift over to the Development Services Department. Next slide, please. 2 examples and I'll be done. So this is what it looks like on resident to resident. We're always going to ask people to talk to their neighbor first. That works a lot of the times, not always, and people aren't always comfortable with that, but most of the time, talk to your homeowners association, talk to your property manager. There's a lot of ways to deal with this that don't need the city involved. If it continues, then there is a point in time when the city can be involved, and that's when we have to go assess the noise. Is it somebody playing music really loud? Is it a kid jumping on a bed? That context matters in residential situations. Is it something that can be dealt with without any kind of punitive measure? Hopefully so. If If we're not able to deal with the noise problem in that sort of way, then, and again, of course, all this starts with education. You may not even know you're violating the noise ordinance. But at some point, it moves to a verbal warning, and then eventually, if it has to, you have to address the situation with enforcement measures. But again, it doesn't start with a citation on the spot. It starts with a conversation. Next slide, please. Same kind of approach when we got the business to resident noise. So, I mean, in this case, in the downtown context, it could be, a resident in a condo. It doesn't really matter. But again, the first thing is, I think most businesses in Asheville are good neighbors and want to be a part of the community. It's a conversation. Like, you don't know what you don't know. If it continues, submit the noise complaint. We can go out and take objective decibel readings. We can follow up with the person producing the sound, have a conversation. Sometimes it really is just as simple as closing a window, and that solves the problem. If they're in compliance, if they're doing all the right things, then we're going to call back the person that complained and said they're fine. Like, they are doing what the city of Asheville has laid out in terms of regulations. There's not a violation. So we're going to try to, be transparent in both directions on that conversation. Eventually, if we get into a situation where the business is unwilling to mitigate the sound, then we move into the violation process, which in this case could be a combination of fines or, for sound exceedance, revoking a permit. Obviously, that's not what we want to do, but that's where things can end up. But that's after we've had some initial work to try to solve the problem. Next slide, please. This is my last one. I'm sorry that I probably took too long on this, but what we're asking to do is we want to continue to move the ordinance forward. We want to get some of this in place because DSD is actively enforcing this. We believe the ordinance has tools that we can use to try to address some of the issues that exist in the city. We have recommended that in light of where we're at in our economy and post-COVID recovery, that we have a 6-month kind of trial period. So we'd like to put some things in place, delay the effective date for 6 months, continue collecting data, bring that back to the city council, make any tweaks we need to, and perhaps by, for example, January 2022, have this thing in place and working the way that we think it needs to. And in the interim, we continue to address noise as we can to build the program, and we're hiring people to help us. And that's what I have for now, and I can answer any questions and be happy to hear any feedback the commission has. Thank you.
Questions, comments? See Dane's, Dane, Sage, and Andrew. So Dane first.
Yeah, regarding all of the public feedback that we've received, all of which was negative, and it was basically all downtown people. So being a downtown resident, I took it upon myself to talk to a lot of the downtown people to see what was really the concern about the noise ordinance. And so I can give you some feedback on that. And first of all, I want to tell you what people are not upset about. They're not upset about the buskers. They're not upset about the drum circle. They're not upset about downtown after 5. They're not upset about the concerts at Pack Square. They're upset about one thing, and it's rabbit. And that is what it all boils down to. If you want to talk about what the issue is with all of these different complaints, it's rabbit. And what everybody is saying is very consistent, that the decibel ratings are too high, that the enforcement is not in place and won't be in place for months potentially, that we don't have a good plan for implementing this ordinance, that the measurements need to be taken at the boundary of the property, not blocks away where it's already impacting people. So basically, you're looking at one issue here, which is rabbit, which is a good example. If we're going to have these performance venues outdoors, they're going to have to be regulated. And basically what people are saying is we're not ready to implement this ordinance, and it needs to be delayed until we have clearer standards in place, and that they're reasonable not just for the few venue owners, but also for people who work and live downtown. So that's basically what people are saying, is just delay this until we have a better handle on what it really needs to be. So we're not trying to hamper musicians' ability to earn a living. We're just saying, and I looked at Rabbit Rabbit's webpage, and those are not local musicians that they're presenting. Those are nationwide bands that they're bringing in. They're going to have 3,000 to 4,500 people per event, and it's just, it's actually, I think that if anything, that's going to harm the local musicians more than help them. So there's no complaints about the buskers or any of the local musicians. It is Rabbit Rabbit. It's really what it boils down to.
Thank you. I think Sage was next, and then Andrew.
First, a comment to Mr. Woody, who continues to amaze me with how he is tackling this very complicated issue. I can't see him on the screen right now, but I really appreciate your efforts, Ben, and you continue to come back with reasonable advice and quality input. I just want to thank you. To Dane's point, I have heard a few more things. I have certainly heard about the Rabbit Rabbit and its adjacency to a couple of residential buildings. I have also heard consistently about what I can attest to as well. I'm currently in downtown on Biltmore Avenue. There seems to be an increase in these car noises, jacked up exhaust. don't know the terminology for it, but these loud cars that are intentionally going through town to make a scene or a noise. Also, there is another particular property and its adjacency to another bar that isn't Rabbit Rabbit that I continually hear about. It's over on it's the Sly Grog, and its adjacency to the Patton Place. So I've heard that one a few times too. But to Dane's point, I agree. This seems to be an issue of particular situations, not a blanket issue throughout downtown. So I hope that we proceed with that in mind. And to this commission, I think this comes back to some of our design recommendations as well. We're in some ways pitting businesses or locals against residents, and I don't think that's the goal. And we could be doing things when we go to update our guidelines around recommendations for windows that have sound reduction, or tree plantings that reduce sound. I think with the incident at Patton Place and this Sly Grog, some trees were cut that really would have interrupted that noise field. And there's some things that we could probably do that are proactive that aren't just restrictive, and I wanted to share that sentiment. That's all right now.
Andrew?
Yeah, so I too want to say thanks to Ben, because I know, and I look back at the timeline in the presentation or in the website, it shows that we met together as the buskers and y'all met together in May of 2019. And I just want to say that from that meeting, I remember the buskers had a couple red lines that we said, don't cross these, please. And you didn't. And we said, hey, actually if some reasonable sound noise regulation actually would create more space for more buskers, because you can have one very, very loud performer on the street corner, and they can actually prevent a lot of other performers from being in nearby street corners. And so I just want to say thanks for hearing us. And if you brought that same level of attitude and cooperation to the other meetings and other community groups that you've met with, then I think that you did a great job with that. Other thing I'd like to say about this is that with as regards to all the public comment was about the health effects of noise. Well, if you want to talk about the health effects of music, that's easy to find. And the health effects of music are that it lowers stress. It's actually good for your heart health. So I wanted to say that there's a lot of misconstrued information, or properly construed misinformation, however you'd like to put that, in some of the public comments. And as I know that we got design professionals here to talk about design. I'm a sound professional. I might be the only sound professional here, so I'd appreciate some deference as far as my level of expertise goes. There's a big difference when it comes to the occasional very loud sound that we have to deal with. And we're probably only talking about a few events a year, and we may be spending more time in commission meetings than the noise that is actually being produced talking about this. And so and I think the reason for that is because we're approaching very carefully, and that's good, because a tremendous amount of our downtown culture could be affected if we get this wrong. And I don't think we got it wrong. I think Public Safety Committee's recommendations are great. I'm I watched that meeting. I watched the entirety of that meeting. I had a meeting yesterday with Asheville music professionals discussing where we're at, and it feels that if you want to know the truth, I think the musicians aren't getting everything they want, and the venue owners aren't getting everything they want. And that tells me that we've probably got a decent place that we've landed here on this. And because it's the sense that I'm getting is that there is room for our industry to continue, continue creating jobs and creating music. And so I just want to say thanks to Ben, and I'd like to thank the commission in support for being such great neighbors. I live down the street from the Gray Eagle, and they're more a part of the community than I am. And so I'm widely deferent to our culture here as a participant and an enjoyer of it, and I'd appreciate the same from all of y'all.
Thank you. I see Ruth and Stephen Lee. I'll go with Ruth first.
Thank you again, Ben, for the informative information that you provided today. I'm very concerned because Asheville has worked for such a long time to get people to live downtown. And I think at 75 decimals, we're looking at a situation, I think, which is going to discourage people to move downtown. We're talking about putting, I don't know if it's affordable housing, the perfect terminology, but we're looking at that lot that's next to the bus station to build housing. It backs right up to a performance center. And I really feel that 9 to 30 events on an annual basis is really too much for downtown residents. And I think we're going to see a lot of condo projects allowing people to basically do short-term rentals. And I think we're going to lose what we've worked so hard to achieve in downtown Asheville if we allow the noise to be as high as it is projected. Thank you.
Stephen Lee.
Thank you, Chairman Moffitt. I think we're first of all, we're fortunate, Andrew, to have you on here because you are providing kind of a link to an understanding of music that I certainly don't have. And it's great to be able to get your feedback and input. I have been to Rabbit. Dane, I appreciate you being very upfront about what you're hearing. And it's always unfortunate to, kind of single out a single entity, but I've been there. For anybody of y'all that have been there, it's a fabulous venue and it's fun and it's awesome. I love the Salvage Station. And, last concert I was at there a week ago, 10 o'clock, a great concert. It was over and everybody was like, great evening, I think that I had a question for Ben. Ben, from what I just saw, it appears that the proposed decibel level is higher than what city staff had originally recommended. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. So I would just like for us to strongly consider city staff's recommendation. I'm not quite sure why I guess it was the Public Safety Committee that made the suggestions. I'm not sure why we're trying to maybe match Wilmington at this point. But my last point is that, I remember 20 years ago when there were basically very, very few downtown residents, and buildings like Aston Park and the Sawyer Motor Building and the Crest Building had plywood over their windows and pigeons flying through the buildings. And folks, that was 20 years ago. That's a long time ago. There are people that are, I think, good development projects in the Central Business District or suggested not allowing them simply because they were not going to be long-term rentals or permanent residences that were great projects. And we just stated that this is not the kind of direction that we would like to suggest the city go in. So I think we have to consider this, but I strongly encourage this decibel level to be where city staff has recommended it. And the late hour, the 12 midnight, is just too late for an area where you've got residents, dozens of people living so close by, especially with what Ruth brought up, which I thought was a really good point about how council is considering moving forward with high quality residential development adjacent to a major performance site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just, I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Johnson, and just one piece to add from public safety that's important. In that recommendation, public safety did ask staff to reconvene the Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods and Asheville music professionals to discuss these decibels. So we do have a meeting on Monday with both those groups. So I do want to make sure that this commission knows that while the public safety raised the decibels, they did task us with going back to portions of the community for additional discussion. So that is going to happen next week. Thank you.
Ben, the previous recommendations by staff were 72 decibels daytime, 67 nighttime, 57 late night. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we're talking 3 decibels in the daytime, 3 at night. Yeah, okay, I got it.
Yes, correct.
All right, I've got Gio and then Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a comment, having lived in a very dense urban situation before. But it was when you move into an urban area, there should be the expectation that you have greater noise, whether it's ambient noise or the mechanical noise of trash picking up into. But we're talking about music venues and sort of the I don't want to call them fringe, but not the average sort of noise generation that happens. And I think that because our downtown core hasn't really developed to where we'd like it to develop, the density, the mix of uses and so forth, there may be an unexpected or an unreasonable expectation that's going to stay kind of quiet all the time, or quiet not more than where it has been, or where people had come in and say, okay, I can accept the dub circle, I can accept the buskers, but we can't, Rabbit is new, and we haven't given it really a chance. And I think this is a good method of seeing how much we can handle, and whether we can have the expansion of some of these other areas and music venues throughout the downtown. But the downtown core is changing, and I think that if this part of this is to revisit the noise ordinance on a regular basis, I think this is a good approach, because downtown is changing, and the expectations of noise have to change along with it.
Before I kick it over to Andrew, I would like to point out from Mr. Woody's presentation that the current recommendation is that the ordinance, that they start looking at this, they look at it for over the next 6 months before they finalize the levels, and then we have various means of tweaking this as we go forward. So none of this it's not currently even an ordinance, much less set in stone. So I just want to point that out as we continue to discuss this. Thank you. I think it's Andrew and then Dane and then Franzi is what I've got on my board.
Yeah, I'd like to share an experience. I actually met with a downtown venue, and they actually, because of the uncertainty around the noise ordinance, they have actually declined to restart their music program until this gets figured out. So even this discussion is hurting the industry. And I really want to caution anybody who wants to say they're pro small business. If they wanted, right now, if you wanted if you get this wrong, even the discussion of it is harmful. And a few dB might not be might sound like a small difference, but it is actually, it could be a big difference, because this could easily, the fear here that people have in my industry is that you can have one person who had enough money to move anywhere in the country, and they chose to move here. weaponize the noise ordinance and shut down a venue that creates dozens of jobs for my industry. That is the fear if we get this wrong here. So I think Public Safety Committee did a fine job in trying to thread the needle on this. The best feature of the noise ordinance is that we're going to review it, because we don't know if we're going to get this right. We can't know until we go into it. So the best feature of it is that we get review. So I don't want to, there's a lot of sausage that's gone into this policy. I don't think we need to remake it right here. And I am very appreciative of the hard work that has gone into it. And you know, we're just, let's move forward together with what Public Safety Committee is hashed out and kicked up the council. So.
Thank you. Dane, your hand is still up. Do you still need to speak?
Yeah. Two things. First of all, Ben, this meeting on Monday, can you send us a link for that meeting so that concerned people can get their input into that meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, Dane, can we connect after this and get that figured out? Does that sound okay?
Sure. And also
Okay.
to Guillaume's point about downtown changing, you know, downtown is changing. I've lived here since 2007. I've seen a lot of changes. Most of them have been positive, and we've all learned to tolerate our neighbors and, you know, to get along with, you know, a certain amount of noise. I certainly understand that that's part of living in a dense urban environment. But we have a point here where we have to decide, you know, Asheville is changing, and what direction do we want it to change in? Do we want it to be more of a residential downtown, or do we want it to be more of an entertainment district? And I think the direction we've been going in for the past few years is for it to be more residential, more denser living. And, you know, I have lived in cities that became entertainment districts, and it basically drives the residents out. So if that's what you want to do, then this is a great ordinance. If you want more residents living downtown, then you need to contain the noise and make it so it's livable. I've already talked to a few condo owners who are saying, if you pass this ordinance, we're going to switch to short-term rentals for our building. And so that's what you'll get. It'll become an entertainment district. It'll be like an Austin, where people don't want to live there. And I remind you that we have 600 apartments being built on South Slope right now. And we're also looking at building affordable housing right next to the Rabbit venue. So this isn't a case where we can say, oh, let's give this a try and see how it works. I mean, we'd be better off sticking with what we have right now that we have lived with for the past however many years, rather than trying something that is probably not going to work and then coming back in 6 months and say, oh, sorry, we screwed up. You know, that's not going to be acceptable to people to do that. I mean, this needs to be something that is figured out ahead of time, not done on a test basis where we can say, oh yeah, that was too high. Sorry, guys. Anyway, that's my point.
Franzi.
Yeah, so Ben, thank you so much. You really, this is a tremendous amount of work, and it was a really good presentation. I feel like, I personally feel like we're in a good place where we're at. I do think it needs to be somewhat of on a trial basis, because we're talking about, you know, the good neighbor policy, the spirit of goodwill, community collaboration. You know, do we need to be punitive at this point? And I don't think we do. I think that we can test this out at the level which it is, because I think it feels like a good compromise. And it feels like we still have a lot of data to collect. A couple of years, you know, especially with COVID and what it's done with, you know, for or not for the music industry and venues, they're still struggling greatly, and you know, especially our music venues. And I think that in light of that, the last thing that they need is for more punitive measures that are going to affect their ability to continue being in business. And these are all mostly locally, independently owned businesses, and very, very valuable to the culture and the fabric of our community. And the fact is that, you know, I've been a business owner downtown for a long time, since 2006. And my experience with business owners is that they collaborate really well because they all want what's best for our community in the end. And so I think that trusting these adults to collaborate and building on an ordinance that helps collaboration and helps both sides is going to be in all of our best interests. And I do believe where it stands right now and the vision that it has right now is doing that. And I respect that. That's what I love about Asheville. The only other thing I will say is that when we're looking at other cities, I find that so extremely valuable to base it on what's already worked in other places. And I do think looking at those cities, and if they're, and I'm talking specifically around downtown, if it has affected and how it's affected their residents downtown, and looking at that as well as not just, you know, what works economically, but what has worked for a thriving downtown residential community as well as a thriving downtown business community is great to look at. And I'm sure you have, but that would be some good data to reflect in presentations. So thank you so much.
We've been on this one topic for about 40 minutes or so, so I'm going to start moving us towards our next topic. I want to point out a couple things. One, again, I want to echo all the hard work Ben and everyone at DSD and APD and all of the community groups have been pouring into this. Also want to point out that Mr. Woody has already stated that they're having additional meetings this coming Monday. And so the current recommendations are not probably finalized yet. There's still a lot of chances for stakeholders to continue to have input. And I would encourage anyone who is on this call now or would be listening to it later to please attend those meetings and have your voice heard. I really appreciate all the voices that have been heard so far. Since we don't have a formal recommendation and it's not finalized, I don't think it would be prudent to make a vote at this point in time. We have all given our input, had a chance to give our input. We will continue to do so. And I appreciate that. And unless anyone has any objections, I'd like to move us towards the next one, the next item on our agenda. I think Sage wanted to speak very quickly from a public comment from Peter Landis before we do that. Is that correct, Sage?
Yes, thank you. So at our last meeting and at every downtown commission meeting in recent years, a downtown resident by the name of Peter Landis was tuning in, attending, speaking. He was such an incredible advocate for downtown, like few others I've ever met. He always showed up. He always gave his input. He always collected input and advice from other downtown residents and brought it to us. Recently, when we were going through new appointments for the Downtown Commission, Peter reached out and was considering applying, and I encouraged him to do so. I think he would have been an incredible asset. So it is with great sorrow that I share that Peter passed away shortly after our last meeting. And he was a friend to downtown and a friend to this commission, a dear friend of mine. So I appreciate you letting me take a few minutes to say this, but excuse me. Peter had sent an email that he was expecting to share public comment about the noise ordinance at the last meeting. And frankly, he was very upset that he didn't get to. And I think there was just a miscommunication. He thought that he would get to read it loud, but it was an email. So I requested this time just to read his comment, because this was a very important thing to him. So if you could just bear with me for a minute. This is Peter's letter. Hi, I'm Peter Landis. I live downtown, and I'm calling about an issue that should be on your agenda, but certainly doesn't appear to be today. I know the city's Development Services Director has briefed you in the past about the proposed new noise ordinance. It has been delayed for some time by the COVID pandemic, but now it appears to be gaining steam and moving ahead with sufficient examination. I understand the proposed ordinance is still being tweaked, but the most recent available version shows holes, contradictions, and allowances that would threaten the viability of downtown as a place for people who actually live there. Julian Price had a vision to revive downtown by making it an enticing place for people to call home, not just for tourists to visit. He saw that downtown's revival depended on a vibrant, balanced mix of the two, and I support that. As I know this commission does too, But unless it is modified significantly, this ordinance would allow noise levels so high at times as to discourage residential development of any kind. It would allow residential buildings to be bombarded for hours with a level of sound that the CDC calls dangerous, and that OSHA considers so harmful that it requires ear protection for workers who are exposed to it for long periods of time. I understand some modifications may be coming, but these will still have to be carefully scrutinized. As proposed, the ordinance does not adequately address how it would be enforced. It needs to spell out a tightened system for monitoring noise levels in a sure and consistent way to make sure that the rules are followed. There are those who claim an attempt to tighten these rules amounts to an assault on the music industry here. This is not true. I want Asheville to remain a center for great live music that can attract both tourists and residents. But I also want downtown to remain a great place for residents to call home. I understand the proposal will go before the city's Public Safety Committee. This body will not meet again before that happens, and I'm glad that we are meeting here today. But you will meet before it's due to reach City Council, and I hope that this commission will put the proposed ordinance on its June agenda in time to offer council your guidance on the matter. Thank you. And that is the end of his comment, and I really appreciate you all letting me share that.
Thank you. All right. Unless anyone objects, I think Dane's hand is still up. Dane and Andrew, are you guys okay to move on?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Ben, thank you so much. I appreciate your patience and your time and your hard work as always.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on our agenda is a development impact discussion for the 4 Points project, and Senior Planner Shannon Tuck will be leading us through that. Shannon, you're up.
Good morning, commissioners. The commission reviewed some information that had been supplied by the applicant for what we call the 4 Points project, or it's the property located at 22 Woodfin Street. On the north end of our downtown, it's the existing 4 Points Sheraton site that's across or to the west of the YMCA for context. At the last meeting, we had more limited information. We did not have the color renderings. We did not have some of the photo montages, things that we often have with formal design review. And that was because we have an irregular meeting schedule and submittal schedule because the new design review committee was just being established, and we were trying to we're actually trying to get 2 meetings in the month of June. And so it just kind of messed up the schedule a little bit. So anyway, I'm back today with a complete design review submittal. So I was going to share my screen and walk through some of the new information that has been supplied by the applicant. So if you give me just one moment, I'll go ahead and get my screen going. And please let me know when you see that screen.
It's up.
Okay, great. So first I'll begin with some of the color renderings that were provided by the applicant. I'm going to start with the main facade, which would be, I think, what we would consider the main facade or the primary facade located on Woodfin. And you can see from the rendering some of the material selections. You know, we have a light brick and a light tan brick, and then a red brick. We've got anodized aluminum window frames, glazing at the ground level, and perforated metal balconies. There's also a sort of bronzed metal paneling that's used for the penthouse units and the rooftop restaurant that is included on the uppermost levels of the structure. So you can also see from this view there's a road diet that's proposed that allows for a small amount of on-street parking to be located on that northeast corner of Woodfin, or I guess that's the southeast corner, excuse me. And you can see some of the streetscape improvements, the wider sidewalks, the street trees, etc. Turning the corner, you see the elevation along Central Avenue. This elevation is a little bit more challenging. The commission may recall that there was the existing hotel is sort of located here where my cursor is, behind that blue car parked on the street. And the building as it exists today is sort of a blank, empty wall. And one of the main concerns on this elevation is sort of the expanses of blank or solid wall or lack of fenestration. And the applicant in their most recent submittal has revised that and is now proposing to wrap that end of the structure with 8 new additional hotel rooms, which also provides the needed fenestration, I think, for that portion of the building. We do still have some challenges associated with this foundation wall. The downtown code requires that as the elevation of a sidewalk falls, that as this wall increases in height, when you reach 6 feet, it resets the base floor, and then you're supposed to have, again, fenestration or other windows and openings at that ground level. So this wall reaches that 6-foot point kind of at the close to the intersection, and then reaches a maximum of approximately 12 feet, on this end and this end. So that is listed as a modification in the staff report that will be moving forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I don't know if we are asking the applicant to consider other things that could be done to kind of help add some interest and soften the impact of these expanses. There's also this wall, which exceeds the maximum blank wall width, although I will say not excessively exceeding that. We allow up to 20 feet. This is maybe about 25 feet, and you can see the applicant has proposed to try to give a little relief and interest to it, I think, with maybe a slightly different bricking pattern there. Moving on to other elevations, we'll turn the, oops, sorry, wrong way. Turning the corner, this is now looking at the project from the interstate ramp side. So this would be the western side. So you can see from the ramp, you'd be looking across the surface parking lot at the building. So there's the existing hotel kind of there in the center, and then the building addition that wraps around the hotel. And then on the interstate side, which is perhaps the most, has the greatest visual impact, in terms of height and mass along this elevation, you can see this is where you see all of the extra stories and just overall height and mass. So those are the color renderings. Before I move on to other information, is there anything the commission would like to discuss, or would you like me to go ahead and kind of walk through the other renderings, and we can come back to these as needed?
Shannon, I really should know this. Can you explain the process with design review and our commission, and when it comes to us and when it goes to them, just so we're all clear?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
So all downtown design review, now goes for formal review, will go to the new design review committee. However, we do want feedback from the downtown commission, and for the other design review areas such as the riverfront, we will also be taking these projects to the AARRC for their input. And the commission is free to comment on design related matters. Anything that is design related, we will carry that information to the design review committee. So this project is going to the design review committee next month on the 17th. So included in the staff report and in the presentation will be any comments that were offered by the Downtown Commission for the Design Review Committee's information. Other comments that are not design related will be shared with the City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission as this project moves through the process. Because of the size of this project, it is a conditional zoning, so it will go to both the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. So design related comments will be shared with the Design Review Committee. Non-design related comments will be shared with Planning and Zoning and City Council.
Thank you. Guido, did you have something real quick?
Yes, I'm assuming that on that Central Avenue side, where you were talking about the wall, has an artistic treatment been discussed?
Yeah,
Along
we don't, you're talking about this wall here? the
no,
river?
no, more right along the street side where you have where people are walking, and I think that would be a really great place to do some interesting public art, or something that would animate or put some interest along that wall.
Yeah, that is something that is a recommendation that is listed in the guidelines, and that was something that was identified in the staff report to the design review committee. So I imagine that'll be something that can be discussed. The materials palette identify the sort of the base material as being like a polished block. So that I think is what is being proposed at this level. But that's not to say something couldn't be done to sort of face it or address it that make it a little bit more visually interesting.
Thank you. I think Andrew has his hand up. You're muted.
Thank you. Shannon, thank you for the clarity on the where the comments go. But there's, for instance, if I make a comment that says, hey, the design sucks and the use is great, or if I say that the design is great and the use sucks, where does that comment go? It seems like there could be comments that contain elements of both. Do they just get forwarded to each relevant body in that case?
That would be correct. So if there were positive comments or negative comments about the design, that would be shared with the design review committee, and presumably they would comment on those comments, and so it would be sort of via the design review committee, likely make its way into the staff report that goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council. So even the Downtown Commission's design related comments would likely show up in that staff report. And then for the non-design related comments, those will also be shared more directly in the staff report. We have a section in the staff report that says, review by other bodies or review by other committees. And that's where we sort of highlight, when it was reviewed, who reviewed it, and what were their thoughts.
Andrew, we're working through this. It's new for all of us. My intent, so there are 4 of us on this commission that serve on the design review. And my intent is to make sure that any design related issues, so there are specific design, and then there's specific use or policy issues, and then there are going to be elements that are a bit of both. It is my intent to make sure that anything raised in this meeting gets addressed by the applicant, as far as design gets addressed by the applicant at the design review, and anything regarding policy and or both gets passed on to the other relevant decision makers and stakeholders. So I think that was the intent of the ordinance in this review process, and that's what we're going to try to follow. But it's all new, so when I miss something, you guys need to hold me to account on it. I'm sorry, Shannon, we interrupted you, but that was good stuff.
Well, if there isn't any other comments about these particular renderings, I will go ahead and move on to some of the other information that was supplied by the applicant. First, there's this, let me scroll out a little bit, and I apologize, this is one giant PDF, so I have to scroll through multiple pages. But so here is a northeast rendered view, so you can see the existing hotel kind of located here in the center. And then this is basically the building addition wrap that goes around it. I don't believe this rendering has been updated since they've added the additional hotel rooms on the end of the existing building. So I think this portion of the rendering is a little bit out of date, but you can see the overall scale and just arrangement of the building from this perspective.
You can also see the green roof.
Yep.
The portions that are going to be green roof.
Yep, absolutely. And so the applicant has also provided these sort of perspective renderings as well for the along the Woodfin, so the primary street face. So this is the southwest corner where the small grocer is proposed, looking down Woodfin Street. And then from the opposite end of that same facade, this is the southeast corner looking up Woodfin Street. And this is the proposed retail area. Or I don't know if they exactly have a, they call it retail, but I'm not sure if it's going to be retail or restaurant or maybe just flexible space. But non-residential commercial space, I believe, is the intent for this end. And then at the end of the combined PDF, for projects that are over 75 feet in height, we also require that the applicant provide these key perspective views from certain locations in the city. These are pre-established locations. And so the first one, or I'm sorry, this one is actually just sort of a photoshopped image of the building on that, on that sort of prominent corner. That's the interstate ramp located here. And then of course, this is Woodfin Street. Another rendering or perspective view from Central Avenue looking up the block. And again, another rendering from kind of an axonometric bird's eye view where you can see it in context with the interstate. Here are those predetermined or preset location views that that for buildings over 75 feet that the applicant has to provide. So the first is the intersection of Merriman and Graceland Street. So you can see in the upper view that the building would be just barely visible on the horizon. The second view from Town Mountain crossing over 240 is where you will have the greatest visual impact of the, I think, 5 sites that they ask for a study of. And so you can see in green there, that would be the new building. It would not be visible at all at some of the other locations, including College Street at the west side of the tunnel. It would be located, behind this building, so it wouldn't be visible. Also not visible from Biltmore Avenue and Short Cox. It's just, I think, a little too far away, too much in between and different elevations. Also not visible from I-240 at the Smoky Park Bridge. And then just a little peek view there between buildings from Stevens Lee Recreation Center. Those are all of the sites that are required to be examined in the UDO. And you can see also included in the application was a little bit more detail about the materials palette. We have 2 brick materials for the facing, the siding, including this light tan and a red brick. And this is the light bronze anodized metal panels that will wrap these upper stories that are kind of set back a little bit from the building face. Then we have perforated medical balconies. Here is that stone base at the building's perimeter that is proposed that we discussed on Central Avenue. And then, of course, you have your aluminum window frame and glazing at the ground level. And then, of course, you have glazing in the upper levels as well. And that concludes the new information that we wanted to share with the commission. Be happy to scroll back to any of these images that are helpful for the commission. Otherwise, I would just turn it over to you all to see if there are any additional comments.
So I'm failing the chair test again. We have about 15 minutes left and a lot to cover. So I would ask that you help me out with my failure and keep your comments brief and pointed as much as you can. Any comments or regarding either the design or the use of this proposed development that we can pass along to the other relevant decision-making bodies? Andrew?
Well, first off, I'd like to say this building looks like it belongs in downtown. It's this isn't Charlotte Street. This is Woodfin Street. This is, I think a very different, the street's been underutilized. It's been over asphalted and underutilized, I think, for many years. I think it's of to have more use out of it is great. A little bit of a bait and switch on the expansion of the hotel use on this building, which was not in the original plan as offered, and that's even in private conversations with the applicant there was no sign that there was going to be an expanded hotel use until these more recent use. So and the idea that it's required or necessary is fallacious. There's plenty of places build buildings just like this without any hotel use whatsoever. The idea that we have to lose housing units to build hotel units is it's only an Asheville argument. It's not an anywhere else in the country argument. And so I would greatly like to see more neighbors here rather than more lodging units in this project. So that's the disappointing side of it. I'd like to see the lane reduction on Woodfin Street. I think that's very, very positive. And I hope that this as a conditional zoning application, I hope that council uses their deference to accomplish the goals of downtown that don't include more hotels.
And Andrew, you're referencing the extended stay programmatic function of the new building, correct? Okay, thank you. Any other comments? I would note that this applicant has been meeting with us as far as the design group for 6 to 8 months. I can't remember exactly, but they've been talking to us for a while on the design. Ruth, I see your hand. Thank you.
Yeah, I just had a question, and I don't know if Shannon or someone who's on the new design committee can answer this for me. But when I printed the document, I wanted to actually look at it closer of the color. I'm wondering, the light brick, is that actually a beige or is it a gray? Because it came up gray, and if it's gray, I'm just wondering if it's the same gray that's been used on Ashland Avenue of the building that MHA Works also constructed.
I don't know that I can answer it because it is just described as light brick. When I look at the colors, to me, it's almost like somewhere in between, like a beige tan and a gray. It's kind of a clay color, I think. I can ask for more clarification from the applicant, but I'm not sure. It's just, as you see in the materials palette, it's just described as light brick.
Ruth, we can request that during the design meeting that they, prior to the design review meeting. And I think that's the 17th. And aren't they coming next week, Shannon?
Yep, next week.
Okay, so they should be able to provide us the specifications for this product they want to use there.
Because if it's gray and red brick, that's a lot of massing and a lot of dark color is just my question. I know we can't, the Downtown Commission can't comment on this, but I also agree with Andrew. I'd like to see more apartments and really fewer extended stay hotel rooms.
Any other comments? Very good. And thank you so much for bailing me out, folks. I appreciate that. Shannon, do you need anything else from us on this issue?
Nope, I think I'm good. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. If you folks can just hold on, we will try to move through the updates and reports. Stephen Lee, we've got you down for the Design Review Committee.
Okay, thank you. I think that unless y'all request otherwise, I'm just going to review the projects that come before the committee that are in the Central Business District. Is that kind of good understanding? Okay, so we again saw the 120 Biltmore Avenue project, which is diagonally across the street from the Orange Peel. This is actually from the same architectural team we just saw with the 4 Points project. It's a 9-story mixed-use building that is residential hotel. and we reviewed that. So this was I believe, the fourth review we had for this, and there was just general discussion, but no major issues had popped up. So I'm going to leave it at that. Some exciting stuff going on in the River Arts District that doesn't really pertain to this group, I think. So if anybody has any questions, or other members of the commission that are a part of that meeting, feel free to chime in.
That's perfect. I think they're actually coming back to us with that one for the design review on Thursday as well, for final comment on that one.
Okay.
I don't have anything unless anyone else does. Seeing none, I'll keep us moving along. Megan said that she didn't have any pressing news on the ADA to share, that she would update us next month. And so I'll go to Franzi on the Local Living Economy Working Group.
I don't have any significant updates. Just want to let you guys know that I am stepping down from the Executive Director of Asheville Farm Business Alliance, and I will be handing off that leadership role to a woman named Sherry Lucas, who's been on our steering committee for 2 years. So that's really exciting news. I think that she's going to do a phenomenal job, and so I'll keep you guys updated on that. And yeah, so we've got good plans there, but no other news.
Thank you. And now we have an update on the Parking and Transportation Working Group, and I think Karen Ramsey is going to address us regarding this issue.
Hi, thanks. I'll try to be brief, which is not my strong point. The good news is the pandemic opened up parking in downtown. The question is, how long is that going to last? Some of the issues that we see for downtown and parking, Garrett Mail, who's the head of parking services, told me recently that to best of their knowledge, there's always off-street parking available in one of the 6 downtown garages. But all of us are regularly told by clients and guests that they can't find parking. So one of the things that we wanted to talk to you guys about sort of towards the end is, obviously we need to get people to whatever parking we do have. So we have some strategies for that I can talk about further if anybody has any questions. Our garage signing is still really poor. I've been waiting for 20 years for there to be a sign on Haywood to let people know that the Civic Center garage is full. We've been promised that for years. It's still not there. I just feel like we can do a better job for the folks who come into downtown to help them find parking and to make it a more positive experience. Although I meant to also say, I really do appreciate that Parking Services has expanded some of the monthly parking opportunities for folks. It was really nice to see some creativity from the city, and also an acknowledgement that not everybody works 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. The city does not seem to have a long-term strategy for investment in parking downtown. I think we all know the Civic Center's on its last legs, but Wall Street and Rankin are also both almost 40 years old. The city acquired the surface parking lot next to Transit, but now, but that's the proposed site for affordable housing. And, we're still seeing development downtown. I know it's in the city's best interests that we don't have surface parking lots, but that's going to cause more problem. And right now I manage 2 surface parking lots that are actually held hostage because I have workforce housing tenants who have to park somewhere, and I have to keep these as surface lots because there aren't any options for my folks. So one of the other things to work on is, what is our long-term plan? And I know we have capacity now, but do we have to wait till it's a crisis again, is my question. The third thing is that right now downtown's the only place where the city charges for parking. The city maintains 184 on-street parking spaces in Biltmore Village, a tourist destination home to numerous chains. The city maintains 169 on-street parking spaces along Haywood Road in West Asheville, the city does not know how many on-street parking spaces they maintain in Biltmore Park. There have been conversations for at least a decade about installing meters in other parts of the city. But the city just continues to raise rates and charge a premium to shop at our downtown businesses. And downtown parking is a good business for the city. Not only do revenues cover the cost of the department, but parking revenues pay 1/3 of the salary and benefits of the Director of Transportation, 1/3 of the salary and benefits of the Assistant Director of Transportation, and half of the salary and benefits of our downtown development specialist. In addition, parking began contributing to transit 11 years ago, and for the last 3 years has contributed $1,576,875 for each of the last 3 fiscal years. And it just seems to me it would be a good idea to ask other areas of the city to contribute. And then finally, a lot of downtown businesses were very upset about the $2 an hour increase because they felt it sends yet another message to locals to stay out of downtown because it's pay to play here. And, we've seen a number of downtown businesses that cater to locals have moved out, and others have changed their business model to cater more to tourists just because they needed to survive. And it's not only lack of parking, but I do know a few businesses who've moved out with parking or the lack of parking being a primary driver. So is there a need to strategize to bring locals back downtown? I'm so tired of hearing, I never go downtown anymore. And Franzi was instrumental in highlighting small business with the Go Local, Love Local campaigns. And so do we need to focus on a Love Locals campaign? These are some of the issues and that we could address, but there have been some changes in the way we are supposed to work going forward, and we just need some direction from the Downtown Commission. We were recently told that we are now an informal parking work group, and so we don't have staff support, and we've been told we can't have any voting or formal deliberation. And to be honest, it kind of feels like we've been told to talk amongst ourselves. Sage had to step down when she was elected to council. Ruth Summers and Pat Capps have resigned. Parking isn't very exciting or a lot of fun, but it is necessary. It is an economic development tool. And I think some of us are continuing to meet and work, but we have to feel that there's support, there's a need, there's a will to push for change and to get some accountability. So I'm here to ask the Downtown Commission to let us know, what are your priorities? What should people be working? Do we need to have a parking, whatever we are, at all? And so that's where I am.
Thank you. I'm going to address something very quickly. One, at least the way I've understood it, is that we move more towards working group from subcommittees, mainly in response to COVID, to make things more informal. And I think at least my intention was that we would go more toward a more formal process as soon as we were able to do that. But with that, I think I see 3 hands up. I think Andrew was first.
Thanks, Karen. That was really informative and helpful. I'm curious though, is there any this information may not exist, but is there any information about when you expand transit? For instance, if we went from every 60-minute bus service to every 30-minute bus service or to every 15-minute bus service, what type of relief on parking does an investment in transit make? If you don't know that, I think it's a great question that we should be asking. But I think if you want to look at holistically, not just about where to put cars, but how to get people from place to place, then that's a question that we should have the answer to. So
right, and I think that's valid. I also think that that whole transit question is also not about, which is one of the reasons I'm saying, why are we not asking to take this tiny dot in the city and say you are going to contribute to transit? Seems ridiculous to me. And we've been talking about it, but they never even done a cost benefit analysis of how much we could make if we make the investment. And it just, because as you know, we're already subsidizing transit heavily, and it's a chicken and egg thing, so that if we don't have better transit, we don't get more riders. And if we keep encouraging sprawl and not in making sure we have density, then we're never going to get to a point where transit even makes sense. So yeah, I think that it would maybe be a good idea for parking to also work with the transit folks and have that be part of a combined strategy. Because, you also know that we've been talking, how many years have we been talking about having a shuttle service? I mean, nothing ever happens. And which is why I think people are leaving the parking subcommittee just out of frustration, So, again, a lot of this is you guys can give us some direction and say, okay, these are the things that we want to have as a priority. Then that gives us sort of, I don't know, I guess more authority. I mean, I am perfectly capable of being a crank all by myself, but I'm just saying it's probably going to be more effective if I'm not operating in my private silo, and that we can take advantage of the knowledge and have a more comprehensive strategy as a city. So that was a great suggestion.
Very, very quickly, folks, I think we've probably got at least 10, 15 more minutes of discussion. If everyone can hang on, we'll go just a little bit past time. Gio, you're next.
Karen, thank you. A lot of new information for me as the new guy on DT. So I just wanted to have a simple, as in your discussions during X number of years, has there been any thought to giving the local folks sort of a lesser parking option just for being here, just being the local people? Because and I'm sure that just happens, so I just, because I have not heard about all these discussions, and I just wondered what has been talked about in that sense.
I mean, that there used to be, like, for example, there used to be a special thing if you went to the library, which I thought was wonderful, that you could get a stamp to park for free. And then a lot of those things have been removed. Which is why maybe as part of a Love Locals campaign, what can we do that makes sense to make it easier? Because I think one of the sadnesses I have about downtown, and I grew up here, I saw it dead. It's been great that it comes back, is that we have become more, tourist oriented, and it's really not the fault of hotels. It's the fault of our community for allowing a lot of things to happen and not making investments in keeping people here. So yes, it's been discussed. They've had programs. I don't know.
Came up with all this. Why? What reasons?
I think
look around
just
Asheville and you say, to what purpose? It's all this mishmash.
Am I hearing Pat Whalen?
Oh, God. Yes, I'm sorry. There's nothing we can do about him. We have an open plan office. If he starts laughing, you will not be able to talk.
That's okay. I miss his voice. But Karen, you could mute while I do my comment, if that helps. Okay, so a few things, y'all. The parking committee was something that existed many, many years ago. And in 2017, we reinstated it and picked it up. And I said, I'll just chair that because I am somewhat obsessed for some odd reason with parking. And I led that committee until I joined council. I have not left the committee. I just simply cannot chair it. And I know that it feels like there's probably a disconnect in meetings and communication because of the pandemic and because of this shift to working groups and stuff. I highly recommend you continue this committee and or working group until it can become a committee again, which I expect committees and boards and those little entities to be going back to in-person in 2022. We're rolling out a long schedule of who returns to in-person. This committee is integral to downtown, and not just because of parking, but because of transit and so on. So, you know, on any given year, about $1 million of parking revenues subsidizes transit. And there is a seat, a designated seat on the committee for a transit person. It was Kim Roney until she joined council. So we might just need to fluff up who's on this committee and do a little recruiting and get back on a regular schedule. Because right away I'm hearing this and I'm thinking, okay, listen to some of the things I would love for this commission to continue working on. The shuttle is a great point. The TMIP process isolated the shuttle as something they wanted. And as we come back out of this pandemic and the new executive director at the CVB finds her presence and starts making plans, not just recovery, I think it will be back on the table, and this group will need to have input. Expanding the meters has been something we've been talking about to zones outside of downtown, or increasing the number of smart meters throughout downtown that accept cards. Event parking was a big issue before the pandemic. When big issues happened at events and businesses couldn't have customer parking. That was a topic we were discussing. The local days. We actually, in 2018, went to council with the advent of the Go Local week and got $3,000 in parking passes and handed them out to local businesses. These types of things are options. We talked about a local day, a free Mater Day for local. Please continue to work on these. Input on the new Cox Avenue transit station and the parking around it, remote parking lots and the shuttle itself, where and how. I started meeting, Karen and I met with some developers about, you know, peripheral land. We should continue doing that stuff. We did a parking crawl in 2017 that found hundreds of potential spaces in various places. If we squeezed some, if we had compact cars, if we added meters on this side, not that side, someone should probably review that. We should review it again, pick it up, see if there's opportunities. The 12, we had a win with this parking switch. So now we have 12 hours of parking, which even though the hourly rate went up in subsequent hours, we're now allowing 12 hours. And for $60 to $80 a month, someone that works downtown can get a space in the deck. That's never happened before. That's a win. And that's because of input coming from this committee. We have things that we always want to do, like updating the commercials. I think it's still Harry, who is no longer with the city, reading commercials on the news channels about parking downtown. Let's get some lively voices on there and get, you know, people understanding there's new perks, there's new ways. First hour free is back. I don't want us to let go of this committee, and I want us to own it. I'm glad, Karen, that you're kind of championing it. I will continue to work with you, and I would encourage others to join it. But it's a very important piece, and having a parking problem is a good thing in a city. You do not want the opposite. You do not want empty parking lots and nobody downtown. So the constant management of it is part of the process. And I just hope that we continue to do it and don't feel discouraged by it. I mean, we could write letters or vote at a downtown commission meeting that we want that sign at the Civic Center parking deck by the end of the year. I mean, you know, like, let's activate. We can do this. I know it's been hard with the pandemic, but I don't want us to be discouraged. So that was my little pep talk, and I'm still on the committee and I'll still help. I just can't run the meetings.
Well, that's good news. And I think the thing that's been most frustrating, I think, is we have gotten a few things done, but there have been so many other things where you just hit a wall. And they're, you know, I mean, when I got a message back last month saying that they had never, ever, ever done a study to figure out the cost benefit of putting meters in Biltmore Village. I mean, why, if we talk about it and nobody, you know, it's just that kind of thing. So I think if the Downtown Commission believes that parking and access to the city and those, you know, and just customer service, you know, is important, then I think that there are, you know, that those of us who are left will continue to work. I do like, you know, we do need to get somebody from transit back on. I think that's really, really critical, because I talk a lot about parking, but a lot of it is really about access to the things that we have in this community. And it's just not, it just feels like that we have all these great things going on, and a lot of people who have just decided that they really aren't welcome, and that's not right.
If I may make one last comment, you know, I'm very thankful and gracious for the opportunity to represent us on the city council. And I come with a strong support and love and appreciation for downtown. And I would like the Downtown Commission and other entities like Megan, who can't be here today with the Asheville Downtown Association, to elevate and raise their voices for the sake of downtown. Recently, I organized a stakeholder group of about 20 people and said, hey, we're coming out of a pandemic. There's recovery money. There's a wide variety of issues, small businesses closing, workforce shortage, all these things. How can downtown advocates, business owners, residents rally around how they would like to exit this pandemic? What does the next 10 years of downtown Asheville look like? So, the onus is on us. If we, as the representatives of downtown, as the business owners, as the locals, as the residents, if we care about our downtown, then we have to organize our voices and send things up the chain. And you've got me who would willingly and happily do so. So I just encourage us to remain strong advocates for the downtown that we want, not just the one we want to protect, but where we're going, how, and I think parking and all of these things play into it. So, you're the Downtown Commission. We are the body.
I just want to say I'm going to be a way better ally when we talk about if we're going to talk about moving people from place to place than if we're just talking about storing cars. So if you want to have the big discussion, I'm going to be a big friend on that side of it. I've heard too much about just car storage and car storage and car storage, which is what parking is. And, you need one at home, and you need one where you work, and you need one where you go to school. And that's 3 spots right there, for one car. And it's kind of nuts how we've prioritized parking as a society. And I think in Asheville we can do better. So I'm happy to talk about moving people around, and I'm just storing cars. It's not fun.
Any other comments regarding this? So clearly we need to get the subcommittee / current working group up to snuff. So I'll be working with Dana and contacting some of you folks who've expressed interest in the subgroup going forward this month, and see if we can address some of these issues. And as we come out of COVID, and as we get our subcommittees, we're on a better meeting schedule. And thank you, Karen, for bringing these issues to us. Any other comments regarding this so far? Okay, Karen, do you have any final comments? Are you good for now?
No, I just appreciate, it has just talking to some of the folks who've been involved, that it just feels like we're just spinning our wheels over here. And, and if it doesn't matter, everybody's busy, we could do other things. So, I do feel a little bit, I'm finding a little more energy to put back into this, particularly if we can have an expanded vision for what it means and work more comprehensively, I think, to make things, you just make things easier. So that sounds great. And I'll contact the folks on the remaining, and we'll go from there. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you. And finally, our downtown update report. You should have the link in the agenda. Dana, is there anything specifically we want to touch on? I would like to point out a couple things even before Dana gets started, and that is the reparations and truth-telling speaker series. If you should have gotten an email on that, and I think the final installment is next week on the 17th, and you can attend that. I think you can attend that one either live or view the session. So anyway, Dana.
Thanks for highlighting that. And I'll be real quick. City Council held the public hearing for the budget at their meeting earlier this week, and they are scheduled to adopt the budget on June 22nd. Vance Monument removal is currently on hold, and we don't know how long it's going to be. So I'll just update you all that we're working to remove materials out of the area and open up as much space as possible, remove as much construction, fencing, and activity as possible as we figure out what and when we can take next steps of removal, or if and when we can take next steps of removal. Parking rate changes. The monthly parking rate changes will go into effect July 1st. Rate changes for the garages, hourly rates for the garages will go into effect once the new equipment is installed, which is expected to be around mid-July. And I think those are the main points. There's some other items available in your report if you want to check that out and get more information, but just wanted to highlight those key things and dates. Happy to answer any questions.
Did we have any public comment or anyone on the line?
We didn't have anyone on the line. And we didn't at the time of public comment, which is when we would take those calls, and in the future when we'll take those calls. So we'll make sure to look for that next time and announce for anyone listening that will be the time to make the public comment. We had the written comments, which you all received, and which also are available on the Downtown Commission's public input on the meeting page. So people can click on that PDF that you all received.
And just to update, based on our best knowledge, the council and the quasi-judicial committees will begin meeting in person next month. I suspect they won't. We won't begin meeting until probably August. Would be the soonest. Is that close to correct, Dana?
That sounds right to me, and I'm still waiting to hear more. But I don't think it'll be July.
Okay. And best of my knowledge is that right now, I don't think they are planning to continue doing Google Meet or Zoom or whatever you want to call it for these once we do go live. I think that's correct, right, Dana? It's just the staff support of trying to do a live meeting and maintain everybody viewing and being able to interact is a little difficult.
I don't know for sure, but what I do know is that council went back to in-person meetings and they're taking public comment through the platforms that we've set up, but they aren't doing virtual engagement in the same way that we've done here. So it'll probably be a format similar to that.
Okay. So with that, are there any future items that we need to take up, or are we ready to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Wonderful. Is there a second?
Second, and thanks everybody for being here today.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for hanging around a little longer than normal. I will get better at this as we go, I promise.
You're doing great.
So with that, I will now adjourn the meeting, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.